Hey, this video aims to take you through fields, campaign fields, and what it all means and what you need to do and consider when defining your fields. So, firstly, top section, we have standard fields. These are all the standard fields that we have in the system. And then we have custom fields. Custom fields are additional fields that you want to store against a lead that we don't already have in standard fields. So for example, if you're in the debt niche, you may have standard fields, first name, last name, email, telephone number, and zip code. But you may ask additional questions such as your number of creditors, the debt amount, and they would fall under, you'd create those as custom fields. So if I start with standard fields, on the left-hand side is the actual database name. When a field is required, it means that the lead that is passed in must contain a value, else it will be rejected. It will be actually a system rejection. You can use either the database name or the label name. So you may decide that actually you don't want to post a first name and that rather you would prefer to use forename. Guide, by default, when a field is required, it's automatically ticked. And the guide is something that you would give to perhaps your webmaster or your suppliers. If you are not collecting fields by standard or required field, let's say, for example, date of birth, if you tick that, it will always appear on the guide. It will appear as optional, but it will show it on the guide. Formatting, hopefully self-explanatory, but for organizing your data, formatting your data best, we've obviously preset some points here where it's either auto capitalized, title case. You may have, for example, for one of your campaigns, it should always maybe be uppercase. You can do that here. You can also manipulate the way the data goes out, the format the data goes out when you're delivering leads to a buyer, but you can format it on the way in. Mask is whether you want to anonymize any data within LeadByte, particularly for some of your users. And then we have date type. Now, this is available on just some fields where it's relevant. So let's take, for example, date of birth. If you don't want to reject leads based on a date of birth, for example, then you can select none as a data type. If you select date of birth, then LeadByte will make sure that it's in the correct date of birth format. And under options, you will have the option to select the format for receiving date of birth. So for example, Facebook is typically month, day, year. Commonly for us would be a USA type format, whereas the British format might be day, month, year. We also support an ISO 8601 format. Okay, the same applies with things like postcode. So in this instance, this is a UK campaign. So we are making sure that it's a UK formatted postcode, and we'll do that for different countries. Same with mobile. When we move on to custom fields, you can add custom fields as you wish, so a single field, or you can actually do a bulk. So if you have, let's say, 20 fields that you can copy and paste into here, you can save yourself a bit of time rather than typing it out. By default, each custom field is data 1, data 2, data 3, etc. But again, you can use a label so it makes a little bit more sense. There are other features on here, such as a custom field is either not required or is required. It might be a read-only field, or it could be a calculated field. A calculated field, there will be further reading available on our help center, but an example may be if you're in the mortgage niche and you may wish to calculate a loan to value. You can do that using a calculated field. With a calculated field, your options are slightly different, where you can actually put in formula. Okay, I think that pretty much covers it, or at least most of it for fields. So the key points here are, this is the database name. You can use the label name. If a field is required, you must pass in the information. You can format the way the data comes in. You have some additional options here which you can explore. Profanities, for example, are stored, the settings are stored under this option here for first name. So we have a profanity database. You might want to make sure there's a minimum of 2 characters and maybe a maximum of 10 for first name, and vowels and consonants, first and last name combinations. That can all be done under options. And we have various options for different fields. The other important thing with custom fields is that you select the right data type. So if it's a whole number, integer, if it's you're collecting a salary or a currency amount, it may be currency, it could be decimal. This is really important because it ultimately determines how you can filter leads to, for example, particular buyers. So let's just say, for example, you wanted leads where the household income value was between 50,000 and 200,000. Using that operator between, so between 50 and 200,000, will only be available if the data type is correctly selected. So it wouldn't be available, for example, on a text format, but it would be available if it was a whole number, a currency, or an integer. So that's quite important as well. So this is fields, your standard and your custom fields, and this is where you determine how you ultimately get data into LeadByte.